Welcome to African Superstory, a powerful space where African histories, cultures, and heritage come alive. Like, share, and subscribe. Thank you. Horrors of 18th century slave ships. The 18th century witnessed the transatlantic slave trade reach its zenith. Fueled by insatiable European greed and the burgeoning demand for labor in the Americas, this abhorrent system became a brutally efficient machine. It was a machine built on the backs of enslaved Africans and driven by the promise of unimaginable wealth. By this time, the trade had evolved into a complex network. European powers, vying for dominance, established colonies across the New World. These colonies, particularly those focused on plantation agriculture, required a massive and readily available workforce. European merchants, driven by the promise of immense profits, eagerly participated in the trade. They commissioned the construction of specialized vessels designed solely for the purpose of transporting enslaved Africans across the Atlantic. These ships, known as slavers, were a testament to the dehumanization inherent in the system. The design of these vessels prioritized profit above all else. The basic humanity of those they carried was utterly disregarded. Every decision, from the dimensions of the hold to the placement of the rigging, was made with the goal of maximizing the number of enslaved people that could be crammed on board. The design of a slave ship was a chilling reflection of the dehumanization at the heart of the trade. Modifications were made to maximize the number of enslaved people that could be packed into the ship's hold. This meant sacrificing any semblance of comfort, hygiene, or basic human dignity. Extra portholes were sometimes added, but these provided only minimal ventilation. The air below deck remained thick, fetid, and suffocating. The ships were also armed with cannons and other weaponry. These weapons were strategically positioned to quell any potential rebellion. The display of such overwhelming force underscored the power imbalance and the ever-present threat of violence. It served as a constant reminder of the enslaved people's utter lack of control over their own lives. The journey across the Atlantic, known as the Middle Passage, was an experience of unimaginable horror. Enslaved people were packed tightly together with children. Some are standing with the hands and legs chained and heavily guarded. A slave girl looking in the ship's hold, often chained at night and able to move as cupbearer to the crew. They were subjected to unspeakable suffering every day on the ship. This is African Superstory, a powerful space where African histories, cultures, and heritage come alive. Like, share, and subscribe. Thank you. Disease spread on the slave cargo ship rapidly in the cramped, unsanitary environment. Illness and death were rampant. The lack of proper sanitation created conditions that were almost unbearable. The constant fear of violence spread between the crew members, coupled with the physical hardship of the slaves boarded the ship, developed throughout the months of sailing, created an atmosphere of despair and hopelessness. Many did not survive the journey, their bodies thrown to the sea, including crew members. Those who did were forever scarred by the experience. Beyond the physical suffering, while journeyed to the foreign land far away from Africa on the slave cargo ship, the enslaved endured profound psychological trauma. Families were torn apart by slave trading masters, sold to another slave masters and never to be reunited or heard from again. Individuals were stripped of their identities, their cultures, and their very sense of self. They were forced into a life of servitude, strong labor, and hardship, with no hope of freedom or autonomy. Sexual violence and harassment, including raping women, both teenagers, was commonplace. The men were horribly disfigured with serious torturing and whipping, similar to the popular movie 12 Years a Slave, and the journey itself was a living nightmare, a constant monitoring, guarding and assaulting their mind and spirit. The psychological wounds inflicted on enslaved Africans during the Middle Passage were profound and enduring. These traumas did not end with the journey. They were carried into the brutal reality of slavery and passed down through generations. The anguish endured aboard those ships and the dehumanizing lives that followed left scars that still echo in the collective memory of the enslaved generation against their slave master today, shaping the ongoing legacy of slavery. The merchants who profited from the slave trade displayed a callous disregard for human life. The wickedness they embodied and the atrocities committed by both merchants and slave masters were staggering in their cruelty. Systematic acts of dehumanization, not only against Africans, but against humanity itself. These horrors echo through history, raising a haunting question for today's generation. How could anyone be this cruel? No one can truly answer. The silence only deepens the wound, stirring a profound and lasting concern in the hearts of generations to come. The merchants' focus remained fixed on one goal: maximizing the number of enslaved people they could transport. In their relentless pursuit of wealth, they became blind to the immense suffering and inhumanity they were inflicting. They viewed enslaved Africans as mere commodities, objects to be bought, sold, and exploited for profit. The human cost of their enterprise held no weight in their calculations. Blinded by greed and stripped of empathy, they reduced men, women, and children to entries in a ledger, names replaced by numbers, stories erased by transactions, took away their tradition, religion, freedom, and their rights. Money indeed is the root of all evil. The merchants' indifference to the suffering of the enslaved is a stark reminder of the moral bankruptcy of the slave trade. Their actions stand as a testament to the depths of human cruelty. The enslaved were the backbone of the economy, forced to labor endlessly to build the wealth of their captors. They toiled in fields, workshops, and construction sites, both winter and summer, non-stop, laying the very foundations of cities they would never be free to claim. Their sweat and suffering were the invisible mortar of an economy that thrived on their oppression. Their legacy is one of shame and infamy. When an enslaved person attempted to escape, the odds were overwhelmingly against them. 8 out of 10 were often recaptured, hunted down like fugitives by patrols, dogs, or even those coerced into betrayal. The punishment for such acts of resistance was swift and brutal. Floggings, mutilation, branding, or even death served as grim warnings to others who dared dream of freedom. These extreme reprisals were designed not only to punish the individual, but to crush the spirit of rebellion across the entire enslaved population. Yet despite the terror, many still risked everything, proving that even in the face of unimaginable cruelty, the desire for liberty could not be extinguished. This is African Superstory, a powerful space where African histories, cultures, and heritage come alive. Like, share, and subscribe. Thank you. The legacy of these vessels continues to resonate today. Slavery has not vanished, it has merely taken on new forms. Modern atrocities such as human trafficking, sexual exploitation, mental enslavement, abuse of power by elites, systemic oppression, and the orchestration of conflict and terrorism in African nations all echo the same dehumanization once practiced during the transatlantic slave trade. These realities serve as a stark reminder of one of the darkest chapters in human history. The horrors of the Middle Passage must never be forgotten, for remembering is the first step toward justice, accountability, and change. Emancipation may have ended slavery on paper, but freedom was far from fully realized. For formerly enslaved people, life after slavery was a harsh and uncertain journey. They stepped into a world that had stolen their past and offered little promise for the future. Stripped of land, education, and economic opportunities, many were forced into exploitative labor systems like sharecropping. freedom in name, but servitude in practice. The legacies of racism and inequality endured, shaping laws, institutions, and everyday life. Families once torn apart by slavery struggled to reunite. Despite overwhelming odds, African Americans forged communities, built schools and churches, and planted the seeds of resistance and resilience that would fuel generations to come. The suffering endured by the enslaved people on these ships had a profound and lasting impact on individuals, families, and communities. The wounds inflicted during this period continue to affect societies around the world. It is our responsibility to remember the victims of the slave trade and to work towards a future where such atrocities never happen again. The echoes of the past demand our attention today. Understanding this history is crucial for building a just future. We must confront these truths to heal and move forward. Let us carry this knowledge forward and actively work against all forms of oppression. We must challenge injustice wherever it appears. Only through vigilance can we prevent history from repeating its darkest chapters. Future AFRIKAN Super Story presentations will explore other vital aspects of our history and culture. Stay tuned for more insights into the resilience and triumphs of African peoples. We will continue to share stories that matter. Thank you for watching.